Good evening, folks, and welcome to another episode of Cover One Football Weekly. I am one of your two hosts on this evening, Anthony Prohaska, joined by Kendall Mirsky. For the third week in a row, Russell Brown has to be a father to his son, coaches his son's football team. They had some movement in their team this week. They're actually playing, 7:30, I think it's 7:30 Eastern time. I could be wrong, but Russ has a game tonight that he's coaching for his son's team. Fingers crossed for Russ.
Yeah.
Hopefully they don't have
He could use that bounce back.
He really could. They had a rough loss last week towards the end of the game. Turnovers will kill you at the little league level, high school level.
We're going to talk about it today.
We are going to talk about it today. Those themes are consistent no matter what level of ball you're playing. You know what would really help? If I brought my mic to my face and not far over.
I thought it was a little far away when we were talking pre-show.
Embarrassing.
It sounded a little bit better as we kept talking, so that's funny.
I just think it's my good looks eventually start to wash over the viewer and yourself included, so you just forget about all other sensory. You're just focusing on the vision piece, so sight is number one, and then sound, taste, smell, they're gone. The sixth sense where you can see ghosts, you get that because you're a child.
Of course.
It all goes away. You just focus on the handsomeness. That's the meal ticket. That's the calling card. In tonight's episode of Cover One Football Weekly, Kendall, you and I are going to dive into a pretty hefty menu of Week 4 options. We've got the Philadelphia Eagles moving to 4-0, and we're going to talk about that game because it featured two teams that we have been high on here on the show, in the Philadelphia Eagles and the Jacksonville Jaguars. We're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills' come from behind victory against the Baltimore Ravens in a less than ideal weather and game script scenario in Baltimore. And then there's a multitude of 2-2 teams sitting here in the NFL at this point. We're going to go through each of them and talk about whether or not we believe in those 2-2 teams. I don't care that it's a 17-game regular season now. I'm still in that mind that the first 4 games are the first quarter of the season. So the first quarter of the season is done, roughly. You have an idea a little bit of who teams are going to be, and with several teams being 2-2, kind of sets the table for the rest of this season. So we're going to dive into a lot here on this episode of Cover One Football Weekly, and we're very excited. For those of you who are joining us live, if you are here with us live, 1, thank you very much. 2, drop a like on this video. It goes a long way towards helping us to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. 3, any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, theorems, ideologies, philosophies, maxims, anything and everything you got, throw it up into the chat. We appreciate any and all engagement with one another, with us. We appreciate all of it in all forms. Kendall.
Yes, sir.
Let's dive into it with this first game here. And again, like we mentioned, the Philadelphia Eagles came into this game 3-0. They lead this game against the Jacksonville Jaguars 4-0. Let's start with the Eagles, since they are atop the NFL as the only undefeated team left in the NFL. What are your thoughts here on the Philadelphia Eagles coming out of this game?
I mean, dominance again. And the thing is they started slow and still got to dominance. And I think that's a sign of a really good team, a team that can start off slowly, kind of make some mistakes early in a game and still have the mental fortitude, but also just the talent and the execution level to fight back into the game. So I think it's multifaceted. It's not just one thing, but I think obviously anytime there's a comeback, you kind of go back to the roots of the team, the culture, what they're instilling with their head coach and everything surrounding them from a personnel standpoint, the people in place, and then what's in between the ears, under the helmet. What do they have mentally to fight back into this game? I think that's kind of the root of all comebacks, but they executed and they imposed their will on the Jaguars, a young team that is learning how to close out games. And I think that this is a stepping stone for them to kind of get that learning lesson of, okay, we got up early. We got to shut the door early. We can't just let them hang in here. So I think the Eagles did a great job imposing their will, specifically in the run game. You saw on our graphic today, we got Miles Sanders. I mean, absolutely showed out today.
Yeah.
Him and the Eagles O-line as a whole just really had a great day. I love what the Eagles did, though, like deciding to run the football to try and mitigate the pass rush from that Jaguars front four. I think that was a really smart way to go about it, especially in their conditions with pretty bad weather as well, pretty rainy over there in Philadelphia. So I thought Eagles continuing the domination and solidifying that top 5, now pushing it, I mean, amongst most, probably top 3 offensive line in the NFL. And that was with out Mailata today.
Yeah, for the
right?
majority of the game, he went out in the first quarter. He's getting
Yeah.
an MRI tomorrow on his shoulder, so we'll see what happens from there.
Yes, sir. So I really loved what they did in that regard. I just thought it made a lot of sense, like what they did to mitigate that pass rush, because we talked about it last week. Like
Mhm.
we talked about how effective the Jaguars are at just rushing four or even getting a little bit more creative with some blitzes, but they have the horses
Yeah.
up front to get after quarterbacks. And with a combination of keeping them honest in the run game and also Jalen Hurts being able to improvise and do things scrambling or just improvise to extend plays and make plays
Mhm.
downfield, I think it was a great formula for them to come back into this game and ultimately win. So, I mean, the Eagles are just going to be a really tough out for anyone this year. They're
Everyone.
incredibly deep at every point of their roster. They're incredibly difficult to defend because of the ways that Jalen Hurts is going to stretch you with his legs and now his arm and added weapons on the outside and the five-headed horse that is the backfield. I didn't even know they had Trey Sermon until this week. So
I forgot too, and he pulled off that run, and I was like, "Who's there?" I don't know why every
I
running
thought
back
it was Boston Scott. I was like, when did he just like eat
get dreads
Wheaties?
and grow. I think any running back that's 34, I don't know why, I just automatically assume is Devonta Freeman, and I was like, "Oh, Devonta Freeman." I also did it in the Raiders game for the Raiders Broncos. I was like, "Oh, Devonta Freeman." Yeah,
That's funny.
Sermon is there, which was like a shot at Miles Sanders for a lot of people, but then Sanders came out and had this game today. I love the point that you hit on with just the difference in this game. I thought really was the youth of the Jaguars versus the proven veteran savvy or ability of the Philadelphia Eagles. You had for the Jags that roughing the kicker call. You had multiple fumbles, multiple turnovers. You had the 1 4th down where Lawrence escapes out of the pocket early on and just as he runs, just like drops the ball
Just drops it.
on his own. Yeah, like you really just saw, I think, that youth and
5 fumbles, 4 of them were lost.
that's 5 fumbles
There's some obvious fumble luck, like as every time the ball
and
is
the
gonna
weather
hit
and
the
the weather
ground.
was rainy there as well, so
Exactly.
that's gonna
But
skew towards
anytime
more
you put
fumbles.
the ball on the ground 5 times like that, that's inexcusable, especially when you relate it to the Eagles who only put the ball on the ground once.
Yes, and a lot of those fumbles were in the pocket from Trevor Lawrence. This Eagles front continues to be mean and nasty and effective, and that's again we've talked about it with a lot of teams. That's a winning formula in today's NFL and really in NFL, any era of the NFL. If you can rush 4 and get pressure and just drop 7 into coverage, you are going to have, odds are, a pretty good day on defense. And this Eagles front, Brandon Graham had a killer week last week. Fletcher Cox continues to roll. Javon Hargrave is a monster. Hassan Reddick, huge pickup. I don't know how he
Pretty
keeps
much
getting
won
away.
the game with the strip sack
at
fumble.
the end. Yep. I don't know how he keeps getting away from teams and keeps signing these like smaller term deals. But he was showing speed around the edge, speed to power, physicality. They have a really good stable of defensive linemen on the interior and the edge. And if they can keep getting pressure with 4, that's going to be such a huge boon for them. And I really think when push came to shove in this game, the Eagles were able to lean on their defensive front. They were able to lean on James Bradbury. They were able to lean on A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, their offensive line. Like when push came to shove, the Eagles were able to kind of hang their hat on their studs. And granted, they had some good design at times, but I think a lot of it was just like, I have this guy who's better than whoever you got. Go make a play. And Trevor Lawrence is sitting there on the other side, and you're hoping for Jermichael Hasty going to make a play or Agnew going to make a play. The Eagles thought that Christian Kirk was the most dangerous guy. They took him away for a majority of this game. He's had a solid first.
Smart game plan with Zay Jones out too.
Very smart. And so you're down Jones. Then the Eagles focus on taking away Christian Kirk. I thought that really limited what the Jags were doing on offense. But, they were able, again, they stayed in this game. They only lost by 8. They had an opportunity again with the ball with about 2 minutes left. And then Lawrence gets strip sacked by Reddick, and that's what ends the game. But a lot of what we like about this Jags team is on that younger side. And I don't you really like, what Josh Allen is doing, and he's starting to ascend. But he's not, I don't think he's there yet where he's at that like TJ Watt level where you can just be like, go impact the game now and take over.
He wasn't taking advantage of the fact that Mailata wasn't out there and he was going one-on-one against Driscoll.
I wanted him or give me some Trayvon Walker taking advantage. It seemed like they got more Granted, they were helping. They gave some chip help with running backs and tight ends, but it seemed like there was more interior pressure, whether it was Smoot or whether it was Walker kicking down inside. But at the end of the day, the Jaguars have a lot of solid pieces, but it's just a lot to ask of them right now to just completely take over a game in the way that you've got guys on the Eagles side of the ball that are able to. And Jalen Hurts, again, this game I don't think was his best, with his arm.
No.
But this Eagles offense, like you talked about, they have so many ways they can hurt you. They can beat you for a lot of what they've done in the beginning part of this year. It's been those big chunk plays, whether it's with Hurts' legs or Hurts' arm, going, taking deep shots outside the numbers or using the RPO game and gouging teams over the middle for 12 to 17 yards a pop with A.J. Brown. They've got a variety of ways to beat you. Today, they leaned on the run game and just leaned into Miles Sanders, like you mentioned, 27 carries, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns, multiple explosive runs of over 10 yards. Just even that, right? Like knowing that you can be like, well, the pass isn't working great this game. Let's just run the ball a lot and be successful. And it was on a variety of runs. Majority of them came on the inside, whether it was inside zone or duo, but they were really leaning on those inside runs. And it was a variety. You had those inside runs. You had some stretch runs. You had some pin and pull. Miles Sanders looked real good, setting his blocks up, finding holes, using that explosivity and that agility and that burst inside to generate plays. And I tell you one that there's a lot of good plays today, and I don't want to exaggerate, but Jalen Hurts' rushing touchdown when they're down 14-0 was arguably my play of the day. It's like maybe 4th and 3 from inside the red zone. He drops back to pass. No one's open, so he runs. And he's got 2 Jags defenders in front of him. One of them is Devin Lloyd. He cuts away from the first one to set up a better angle. He and Devin Lloyd meet at about the half-yard line, and Jalen Hurts gets rocked. Devin Lloyd pops him. It's kind of like helmet to helmet. In slow-mo, it's violent, but it was expected. Hurts knew he was going to get hit. He runs at Lloyd, puts his shoulder down, puts his head down. Lloyd pops him. Hurts just gets across the goal line in time before the ball comes loose. But that play was, I remember hearing it last year, like how much the Eagles team was rallying around Jalen Hurts and how much they like playing
and
for
plays
Jalen
like
Hurts.
that when a quarterback is willing to take hits. I mean, we see it as Bills fans. It's that galvanizing spirit that brings a team together and just kind of shows, okay, this dude is willing to get dirty. He's willing to fight for us, kind of bring it all the way back to like the Ryan Fitzpatrick days too. Like that guy was willing to get hit. The team fought for him.
Yeah. And when you match it with like the scheme and the fact that, okay, he's also like extending plays and scoring and getting yards and all these things, it's because it's nice to just have someone you're willing to follow. It's nice if that someone you're willing to follow is also good at football. But I thought that play was just, you're down 14-0. Things have not gone well for you. Pick 6 early in the game. You need a score. Doing whatever, whatever it takes in order to put points on the board. I thought that was a really great run. And again, it was a good, violent football play that, we got to stop. I like this from Silas. He said, sorry, guys, I know I'm a bit off topic.
He's aware.
It doesn't matter, Silas. We appreciate you regardless. Silas comes in. You guys know the super chat rule. You guys and girls know the super chat rule here. And on any show, well, I shouldn't say any show because I don't know all the other show, but for us here on Cover One Football Weekly or the Cover One Film Room or Disguise Coverage, aka any of the shows that I'm a part of, we stop the show, bring the show to a screeching halt, and we bring super chats up as priority. Silas says, can someone remind me, Kendall, this is near and dear to our hearts. Silas says, well, and also thank you very much for being here, Silas, and thank you for the donation.
Yeah.
Silas says, can someone remind me why we took Terrell Bernard when Dylan Parham was on the board and went the next pick? Oh, and motor in space with these 8+ RAS linemen works really, really well. And then hello to you, Kendall. You want to go first?
This just hurts. Like it just hurts because of how much the Bills' offensive line is struggling at the moment, at least in the run game, and how proficient Dylan Parham was in the run game at Memphis. And the fact that he was on the board, as Silas mentioned, and went the pick right after Bernard. And the laundry list continues. I mean, look, this isn't anything against Bernard. It's still just, the Bills run a lot of nickel. It's going to take an injury or a team that runs a lot of 12 or 13 or 22 personnel, something heavier to bring Bernard on the field versus...
Oh, like the Baltimore Ravens, except Taron Johnson stayed on the field.
Exactly. And we really haven't seen a lot of 3 linebacker stuff this year. I mean, Bernard played a little bit week 2, I want to say.
couple
Yeah,
snaps in Tennessee.
he played a little bit more against week 2, and he's clearly the linebacker 3 in this group, but I don't know. We've had a lot of offensive line injuries this year, and I think
Yes.
we've seen a lot more backup offensive linemen than we have seen backup linebackers. And
You
obviously
had a
that's
goal
all
line
hindsight bias, but
You also had a goal line snap today for the Bills where they took a corner off the field and put on Tyrell Dodson. So Dodson was a linebacker 3 in that goal line
and
package.
that was actually one of the other points I was getting to. Knowing that you have a high respect for Dodson, keeping him around, extending him, someone that you like as good linebacker depth, and then also having this guy in the back of your mind, this like bring it back to draft day, someone in the back of your mind know that you like this gem in Balin Spector. Why do you go after Bernard if you know that there's a guy like Spector that could be lingering around and could still make this group, and he has been active for game days. So look, I don't know. It's tough. It's something we've talked about multiple times and we keep kind of harping on, but I don't know. I like both players, Bernard and Parham, but if I had to go back in time, I'd still take Parham just because of the need and the uncertainty at offensive line, and specifically on the interior for the Buffalo Bills.
And if I can go back in time further, I like the way Boogie Basham's playing. I still would have taken Creed Humphrey over Boogie Basham. I would have taken added depth there. For me, I think the frustration is you can never in the NFL, you can never have enough depth in the trenches, offensive line and defensive line, but especially offensive line, and you can never have enough corner depth ever. Those are my 2 big ones. You can never have enough in the secondary. You can never have enough in the trenches. And there's been significant questions about this Bills offensive line group. I think that's what's really frustrating with it too. Like I've seen a lot of chatter on Twitter and different, well, I shouldn't even use Twitter as an example because it's a cesspool, but a lot of people who like, oh no, nobody was complaining about the offensive line before last week. They'll be fine. And I want to be like, I was. Kendall, you were. Like, we were lamenting that draft pick on draft night. And it was nothing against Terrell Bernard, but you're trying to win a Super Bowl this year and beyond. Like, it would be nice to have depth at a priority position instead of depth at a linebacker position that, again, maybe it's 4D chess. And for all we know, the Bills know they're not bringing back Tremaine Edmonds no matter what. So maybe they really like Bernard, and it's going to be Bernard and Milano next year. And so then we're sitting. I like Silas's comment here is, I flew all the way to Miami to watch Tommy Doyle play guard on a torn ACL in the fourth quarter. Yeah, it's just unfortunate. I think what's also unfortunate as well is if the offensive line was healthy and playing well, we're not talking about this at all, but the fact that there's been issues, I think it pushes it to the forefront even more. But Silas, yeah, we second your super chat comment there. Like, we were sitting there on draft night live clamoring for Dylan Parham. They took Bernard. I think we were kind of questioning the position pick and the player a bit. We came a little more on the player. Yes. We came around more on the player after really diving into the tape further. But yeah, I think it's a fair question still to ask. And it's going to be a question that's asked even more if the offensive line continues to struggle in the run game, which I think is where we are at this point. Other question here from Silas. We might as well just dive into any final notes on Jags Eagles.
One thought was, I thought this was Lawrence's worst game. I thought he made some bad mistakes in terms of just decision-making on top of those fumbles that we talked about early. Think about that red zone interception from Bradbury. He had pressure in his face, made the throw while drifting back, and he had a guy open in the flat on 2nd and 7. The nearest defender was Bradbury at about 10 yards past the line of scrimmage. So there was 10 yards of cushion between his guy in the flat and Bradbury. He decides to make the throw past the sticks to Kirk, and Bradbury jumps it. Situationally, it just doesn't make sense.
I saw that, and I was like, Agnew had been having such a good game. I think it was Agnew in the flat.
I think it was.
And I saw him look, and I was like, Agnew. And when I saw the ball traveling deeper, my immediate thought was, oh, coverage bust, touchdown.
Right.
And then Bradbury just jumped it. And so that I made a note of it, and I'm like, I need to go in and see the all 22 when it drops to see what he was looking at.
What he saw there. It's with pressure in your face too. Like, you're not going to get everything you have on that football. Yeah. Just dump it off, get it out quick, get your hot check, all of that. But I don't know that I thought he took a clear step back this week in terms of decision making and obvious mistakes with the fumbles and taking care of the football. So like to see him bounce back, but obviously, as we talked about, this is a very stacked Eagles team and stacked defense, so makes sense that you would see something like this from Lawrence against an opponent like the Eagles.
And we will talk about the Jags later in this episode, as they are one of several 2-2 teams around the NFL that we will be diving into. But I think, again, you have to be encouraged. I know you lost, but you lost by 8 on the road to a very good football team, and you had a multitude of self-inflicted wounds, and you still had a chance to go down and tie this game late. I think there's a lot to like. You're not happy with the loss at all, but I think there's a lot to like still if you're Jacksonville. And we will be diving into them a little bit later in this show, again, as they are one of several 2-2 teams around the NFL that we're going to decide. Are they real? Are they fake? Are they legit? Are they fugazi? We'll see what happens. Drop the banner now. A lot of people in the chat already mentioned in Bills, Ravens aspects. Kendall, let's dive right into it. Baltimore Ravens versus the Buffalo Bills. Comeback win for the Buffalo Bills. Where's your head at focusing on this game right now? What's your biggest takeaway coming out of this game?
I mean, my first one is the Ravens choking away another lead. It's really hard.
This one is less egregious because it was first half based.
Yes, it is much less egregious, but it's still something to talk about because it's trending. It's 2 out of 4 games. You've seen this collapse. And yeah, like you said, this one is not nearly as egregious.
And they've lost 5 straight games at home now, which is a very interesting piece now. It was 4 coming into this game, and now with today, I believe it's 5.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of things to break down with this game, but I think that's the first thing that you kind of have to take away. Why are these breakdowns happening? What is happening with the Ravens in terms of giving away these leads, and why are they susceptible to this? And I think there are multiple factors specifically with this game, but I thought first and foremost, the Bills pass rush and secondary played a very good game. Even at the start of the game when everything was going wrong from an offensive perspective and you were putting the defense in bad positions, I still thought the pass defense, the pass rush and the secondary was playing pretty solid football. But once the game got ugly for the Bills, I thought it was kind of easier for the Bills on defense to key in on those rundowns, those early downs, and get the Ravens into obvious passing situations. Because the Ravens are known to be this run-heavy team, and they still have the threat to pass, as we've seen from Lamar this year. Like this is borderline so far better than his MVP season. He still
Lamar
has a
going
threat
into this
in the
week.
pass game.
Lamar and Josh Allen were the top 2 for MVP for me heading into this week. And I don't know who's 1 or 2 because the offenses are different, but both offenses are, we run through this one guy, everything goes as this guy goes.
Exactly. But to that point, they're a run-heavy team with the threat of the pass, and you have to respect that threat, so you can't necessarily sell out versus the run. No. However, at a certain point, when the game gets as out of hand as it was, where it was 20-3, as a defense, you can kind of afford to be sellout and kind of cheat the run a little bit. You can know, what do we have to lose? We're down 17. Might as well cheat the run when you know they're trying to run the clock away and get out of here with a victory. So you might as well cheat the run on early downs and force them into easy, obvious passing situations. And I thought that they did that really well, especially at the turn of the half. And they did a really good job the whole game taking away Mark Andrews. They really keyed in on him. Teron Johnson was staying physical with him. Dane Jackson was staying physical with him. And then obviously domino effect from there. Once Bateman got injured, things just got even more difficult for that Ravens passing attack, and it allowed the Bills to get even more narrowed in on how they were going to force them into those obvious passing situations. And then we even saw Leslie Frazier bringing in some blitzes on key second downs or obvious passing downs, some Edgeman stuff. So I think this isn't just an obvious, the Ravens are malfunctioning because they're so good at running that game script actually kind of screws them in an inverse kind of way. I don't think there's this holistic one reason that the Ravens have choked twice so far this season. I think the first one was against the Dolphins was a lot of coverage busts, just kind of lapse in judgment. Yeah, they thought they had the game won.
Marlon Humphrey got injured late. He leaves the game.
And this one was much more very little circumstantial things just kept happening
The
to the
Rashad Bateman
Ravens.
drop on third down against Taron
Yes.
Johnson. He cooks him and Poyer is up.
Drops
There's a chance that he takes it down to like, he could house it like he did
Yeah.
against Miami, but there's an easy chance that he's taking that down to the Bills' 30-yard line.
Yeah. So I think, although this is something that is a trend for the Ravens right now, just because of the sample size and they're 2 out of 4 with chokes, but
They could easily be 4-0. That's so frustrating for them.
Exactly. I think a lot of it is circumstantial. And then obviously what happened against the Dolphins, I don't want to chalk it up and say fluky or anything like that, but it's in that vein to an extent. That's so fair. I think this week was a lot of circumstantial things just kind of piling on, snowballing, and forming a domino effect that ended up in the Bills just becoming victorious. But I want to hear your thoughts too, and then I'll come back to my Bills takeaways from it.
It was another weird one. Like I think the Baltimore Ravens are a good football team. I also hate a lot of people pile on, like when the Ravens lost to the Dolphins, and I saw a lot of people coming out being like, well, the Ravens defense is terrible. Like, look how bad they were last year. And it was like, yeah, but they lost Marlon Humphrey last year, and they lost Marcus Peters last year, and they had more injuries all over on that side of the ball. And then like ton of injuries on the offensive side. I just feel like a lot of the talk of the Ravens coming into this year, I feel like it didn't take into account the fact that I think last year they lost the most man games due to injury in NFL history. And they were all at key positions. Like, this team wants to run the ball. Cool. Lamar Jackson goes down. 3 or 4 of their starting 5 offensive linemen go down, and then some of their second stringers go down. Their first string running back, J.K. Dobbins, goes down. Their second string running back, Gus Edwards, goes down. Their third string running back, Justice Hill, goes down. Rashad Bateman was out for the beginning of the year with a hernia injury. All of these things kept happening, but when healthy, I thought this was a very good football team. And it's so weird to see them, again, have a game that looked pretty much in their hand. And what's even more concerning for them coming out of this game from a Ravens perspective, you're up 20-3 at home with the weather and game script in your favor. Like, you could not have really asked for a better start. Like, you're up and things are clicking for you on offense. Just do what you do and get out of there. And again, to your point, I think the Bills started doing a lot more run blitzes. You saw them selling out against the run. That's what resulted in Edmonds and Milano making plays in the backfield. You saw penetration. You saw push from the Bills front. They weren't getting out-gapped regardless of what the Ravens were doing, and they were able to contain Lamar and the run game at the same time. And then you take into, missing some opportunities. You also, I know Bills fans are upset about a lot of penalties that went against the Bills. You have a drop for Rashad Bateman on that Taron Johnson one. That was probably pass interference on Jordan Poyer on that little hitch route, that inbreaker on DeMarcus Robinson. So you're feeling a little hard done there if you're Baltimore. There's just a couple things, and I think this is an example of parity in the NFL. And they also said it on the broadcast. I thought that was really well said. There are so many, because there's parity in the NFL, there's a couple plays in a game that if they swing right or they swing left, they can potentially change the outcome of the game. And several of those, as the game started to go on, kept going in the Bills' favor and were swinging away.
First, 25 minutes was Murphy's Law for any Bills fans.
Yes. You're sitting there. They don't call the hold on Dane Jackson. They have Lamar in the grass, but he gets out of it, throws it up. Milano tries to get the pick, but hits Andrews. Ball pops in the air. Duvernay catches it. Literally Murphy's Law for the Bills in the beginning, and then the pendulum swings back. Every action
roughing the passer. I don't know if that was roughing the passer. Josh Allen.
Josh acted that. He threw his head up, but again,
this is what you get when a quarterback starts becoming the face of the league, and you have to give him respect, especially on the heels of what happened to Tua and protecting quarterbacks' heads. And
I also think you have to look to the one earlier in the game. Patrick Queen he took the crown of his helmet and put that right into Josh's mouth. They didn't call that. I think this one was maybe a little makeup for that. But there was just a multitude of. This is funny. I love this comment from Chris. He says, tell one pie, tell them to open one pie on Sundays. I'm starving. It's all about demand of business. Sometimes they sell out during the week. That's how good they are, Chris, but I appreciate you. I got one pie on Friday. It was amazing, but I digress. One pie pizza, just in case anybody doesn't know, best pizza in Buffalo, New York. Go get yourself some. There's all those momentum swings kept going away from the Ravens, away from the Ravens. Actually, here's a good one too. Yeah. I don't know how this wasn't called. I don't care if McKenzie was making the football move or not. He got nailed in the face, which is not allowed like,
Yeah.
and got concussed, head snap back. Good comment there from Tim. But these plays just seem to keep going, into the Bills' favor in somehow, some way. So I think the Ravens are a little snake bit from a luck perspective, but also the
Yeah.
Bills, I think, put them in that position to have bad luck. The Bills went and they took this
Yeah,
game,
that's
they
fair.
adjusted. I thought they retooled and made some good adjustments. But Baltimore, I think, again, you're sitting there and you're looking at a lot of situational pieces. Like this is such the perfect example of the smallest thing can change a game. The Bills have a great punt from Sam Martin to start the fourth quarter. The Ravens start that drive on their own like 9-yard line or around their 10.
Something like that, yeah.
And they go on like a 9-minute drive and take it down to like the 2 or 3 yard line. And you're thinking like, oh man, like this game's 2020. They're about to go on like over a 90-yard drive, over 8-9 minutes on the clock, and it's going to end up with points. I'm glad for this, RJ. RJ says Packers win. That means I'm alive in my survivor pool. Appreciate you, RJ. I was sweating this one out. Thank you so much. And you're thinking at least, okay, like they'll probably get 3 at the least, or they're probably going to get a touchdown. They end up going for it on fourth down. They don't get it. And again, that margin of error, awesome pick by Poyer. Duvernay was wide open to start.
Oh,
that
yeah.
play.
He's seen earlier. It's not a pick. It's a touchdown.
Wide open. They're playing, it's either cover 2 or it's quarters. But either way, Poyer has to get over the top. Poyer goes towards the middle, and he literally has to speed turn and turn his back to Lamar and book it to the corner. Duvernay's wide open. Lamar just didn't see it. I think that's when Lamar was getting flushed from the pocket, and he just couldn't make that play. But all those little things, like that drive was such a microcosm of how things can swing one way for one team and swing in favor of the other. So if you're Baltimore, you're frustrated as hell because you're 2-2. You very easily and realistically should be at least 3-1. Easily could be 4-0. And if you're the Bills, you're thinking the same thing. Well, we're 3-1. We should probably be 4-0. But I think the Bills earned that game. My biggest takeaway again is the run game for the Bills is extremely concerning for me. I don't think
that was my point I was going to come back to. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, that's a great point from you, but mainly because it's a point that I have, so, no, it's just so readily available. Like we've talked about it all offseason. I just don't think it's sustainable to ask Josh Allen to be Batman on every single play. And when I say sustainable, I mean, in order to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah,
because you just can't ask someone to do that. If you're going to put the weight of the world on someone's shoulders for 18 regular season weeks, 17 games, and then you're going to go into the playoffs and ask them to do that again, that person eventually is just going to wear down. Not to mention the schematic disadvantage that you're at, because eventually teams are going to have everything that you do on tape and they're going to be able to scheme against you and play against you. I just don't think that is a sustainable model to continue to just ask Josh Allen to do everything. This running game has to get going in some form or fashion. And I think we're in a situation again right now, similar to last year, where I don't think this offensive line running the ball is good enough to elevate the running backs. And I don't think any of the running backs are good enough to elevate the offensive line consistently.
Negative
so you're sitting there. Yeah. Like, so you're just sitting there being like, who is it? Like, even if the Bills traded for Saquon, I think Saquon is a tremendous upgrade to any of the running backs the Buffalo Bills have. I don't know how productive Saquon Barkley is going to be, because there's a lot of runs. We talked about it last week. We talked about it off air this week. Everybody loves to, crap all over Zach Moss. And when Singletary has a bad run, it's because the line is bad. When Moss has a bad run, it's because Moss sucks. And I don't think that's true. The Bills' offensive line just is not getting pushed. Yes, Devin Singletary's skill set allows you to work around that a little bit more because he has some shiftiness to him. But he's not a world beater that's making a difference on every play. And like you said, the Bills are stuck in this negative feedback loop. And it's just very hard. We saw it early in this game. What were the Ravens doing? Coming out, pressing these Bills receivers, giving them nothing easy underneath, playing the weather, playing over the top, and saying, go ahead, try and find space underneath us to throw the football. And the Bills couldn't, and it was a problem. And the pass rush wasn't getting there. So what were they doing? They were just putting their hands up and using their length and using their size and getting deflections and tip balls and potential interceptions. That's another one, too, if you're the Ravens, right? That one ball gets deflected and falls right into Patrick Queen's hands, and he drops it. So many snake bit opportunities. But I digress. You have to get the run game going. You have to make something simpler for the Bills' offense at some point. You cannot continue to just be like, well, we're just going to have Josh drop back a ton and just throw it. At some point, it doesn't have to be a lot. I'm not asking for like 5 yards a clip and 6 yards a clip. I'm just asking for, like, if you run it on first down, just give me to 2nd and 7 or 2nd and 6 consistently.
Yeah.
That's it. If it's 3rd and 1, I'd like to be able to run the ball for a yard and be able to get the first down. Just something that keeps them honest. Chris, this is an interesting one. Kendall, what's your thoughts on this? Chris comes in and says Singletary has been sneakily awesome out of the backfield lately. We need to start talking extension. I personally don't feel that way for as far as like that he's the long-term guy. I think he's been the best option out of the backfield. I don't think he's shown that he's this world beater and needs to be the running back of the future. But what are your thoughts on that, Kendall? Because I know there's a lot of, we're talking run game, and there's a lot of contention amongst Bills fans that Singletary needs to get all this work and everybody else needs to be jettisoned into the sun. What's your thoughts?
I like how you put that. I think Singletary is obviously the best back that we have in this group.
Yeah.
But I am not in the position to extend him. I think the best reason you would extend him is if he's going to come back on a figure that's close to a rookie deal. Like, why would you want to put your eggs in that basket if you still have 2 guys on a rookie contract and you could potentially just draft a 3rd one next year or the year after that? I think Brandon Beane has proven that he's on this philosophical model of keep your running back position on the rookie deal as much as possible and spend everywhere else, because you can get a dime a dozen type of running back and elevate his play with good offensive linemen. So I don't think that's in the plans. I could be wrong because these are more like my plans projected onto Brandon Beane.
If he comes back at like if he comes back at like a $2 million a year deal or like 3,
that's what I mean. But I also think he would merit a little bit more than that on the open market. But the open market is a little bit weird with running backs because most of the league undervalues running backs.
That's very fair. This backfield is so. Oh, we got to stop. Chris, we're going to come back to this, but I like where your head's at, Chris. Silas with another super chat. Thank you very much, Silas. You were paying for us to keep the lights on in this one. Oh, and Chris had a good follow-up question too. We got a lot of activity. Like the energy. Silas, thank you very much for your super chat again. Silas says, when we put Josh under center, teams are pressing outside and stacking the box. Gabe Davis can seal and get Brown in space with Motor behind him off tackle. The Bills, I was looking at these numbers last night. The Bills have been successful in their runs to, so I'm looking at it from PFF, so you know their runs by direction. Yep. And left tackle runs and right tackle runs are defined as the ones outside the right tackle and outside the left tackle. The Bills had their highest yards per carry and average in those areas. So when they have been able to get outside and get into space, it's worked. I think a lot of it, though, comes from those crack tosses and those abilities.
They've been working this year.
Yes,
the crack tosses have really been working.
I just think they need more gap scheme in general.
That was my second point on my notes for this running game.
Go with it.
It needs to go back to gap zone or
pin and pulls, power, counter.
Zone runs, it just hasn't. First off, zone runs have not been working this year. You see too much penetration from defensive linemen.
Can I make a comment on that real quick?
About zone runs, yeah.
You know what's really important on zone runs? I said this in the film room last week. Double teams, right? You know what's an important part of double teams? Chemistry. You and I, I'm the guard, you're the tackle. Us blocking that 3 tech and knowing which one of us is going to pull off and climb to the second level, right? That takes chemistry. When you don't get chemistry, when Spencer Brown misses a ton of offseason time and Ryan Bates misses a ton of offseason time and Roger Saffold misses time and Mitch Morse has gotten hurt and Deion Dawkins has missed time. They don't have the chemistry to run these double teams and run, which is a core. There's many core pieces. Well, some core pieces for zone blocking. One of them is that double team piece. There was a snap last week. I think they're blocking Sealer, number 92 for Miami. And it's an inside zone run. And Bates and Brown block him. They both leave him and climb to the second level, and he just comes into the backfield and makes the tackle. Like, it's those little things. And I think it'll come. It's just a matter of, does it come in week 5 or does it come in like week 15? That chemistry piece, you need chemistry and you need to be able to generate push. They're not getting either. And I think that's why the zone run is struggling. Continue.
I think it's, no, you're right though. That is a part of it. But the other part that I've been noticing is the fact that when you do run zone and you have a hat on a hat and it's just, okay, everyone do their 111th, everyone win their one-on-ones. Our offensive linemen aren't winning their one-on-ones. When you have 5 guys across and 2 out of the 5 are losing their one-on-ones, that zone run is busted. And I think a way to kind of mask that deficiency is to get these guys in gap scheme and create a scheme that puts them into positions where, okay, they're in a good space with leverage and you see this guy pulling across and it's an obvious, okay, you get this guy in space, this guy's pinned down, this guy's whatever it is, the scheme is helping put these offensive linemen into positions where they're going to win their one-on-ones and put the running backs in positions where the run lanes are just obvious. They're obvious holes that you have to run through. And like you said, like you always say with zone runs, like it is a create your own adventure.
Yeah.
When the adventure starts 3 yards in the backfield, there's not much creating to do. It's just, oh, okay, I'm going to sit down here and try to get -1 yards.
It's like the adventure is like, man, we're going to go like exploring the jungle and the bus is going to take us there. And then you get on the bus and it breaks down and you're just like, well, this adventure sucks. I don't want to play anymore. And yeah,
exactly. And then you see like the crack tosses and it's like, oh, this adventure has a big number 73 running 5 yards past the line of scrimmage and he's going to take someone out in front of me. It's very obvious adventure. Like it's just, I don't know. I really would like to see this offense get to a bit more gap scheme or at least balance it. If it's not going to be more gap over zone runs, at least balance it to the point where we can see a little bit of both.
Yeah, they were, coming into this week, I believe it was like over 60% zone runs on the year. They were really leaning into that piece, which we kind of anticipated to a degree, given Aaron Cromer's history, but it's just it's not clicking in that way. And I wanted to go back to Chris's other comment in his follow-up saying, sure, but which other running back has worked in this offense consistently? That's my whole point. Like, I don't think I'm going to go back to the point I made earlier. Like, the offensive line isn't good enough to elevate the running backs, and the running backs aren't good enough to elevate the offensive line. None of them, which is why I think I have frustration with when Singletary has a bad run. It seems like everyone's like, man, the offensive line sucks. But when Moss has a bad run, it's like, man, Zach Moss sucks. I think we're in this situation where the blocking, whether it's scheme or individual play, usually it's a bit of both, like Kendall, like you mentioned there. It's hard to evaluate any of these running backs with what's going on with this offensive line. They're giving up push. They're giving up penetration. There's just a lack of performance and execution. You don't have anything to be able to hang your hat on. And I'm going to continue to bang this drum because I banged it all effing off season. You need a pivot. You can't sit and drop back and pass it 63 times a game or pass it to this 80-20 ratio and just expect you're going to drop back and sling it all over the field, especially now with how teams are reacting and building their defenses in this too high world. And you're seeing the secondary skill, you're seeing more quarters, you're seeing more match coverages and how teams are changing the pre to post snap picture. You need to be able to have a pivot, and that pivot for the Bills is the run game. I think it's always a mixture, right? Like if the run game is struggling, you can't sit there and go like, man, it's all O-line or man, it's all running backs. I do think it is more O-line than running backs at this point. The good news is I think it can get better. I think the more this group plays together, you will see more success. And we saw some of that today. I mentioned it even on the Singletary fumble. That was a good run. He got like 7 yards. I know he fumbled, so that makes it a bad run. I'm talking before the fumble. Nice lane, hole. You had some successful runs down the stretch. You had the Zach Moss adjustment last week where that was what I thought was very encouraging from Moss's run against Miami, which is part of the reason why I don't want to give up on him. Granted, yes, it's just one run, but he had an inside run similar to that earlier in the game, and he went inside and got mushed. They run that same look in the second half there, and he gets it, and instead of even looking inside, he bounces it immediately, shakes the corner, and he takes it up on the outside. That's him playing above the scheme and playing above the blocks. That's what we need to see more of. But the problem is you're asking running backs who aren't built to play above the scheme to play above the scheme so much and so often
also,
because of the execution up front.
You're asking them to do that without even giving them a lot of opportunities to do that because of the way that this offense runs. And the way I kind of want to answer this is actually with someone in the chat. Walter came in and said, all the running back chatter is pointless.
I love it. He's just like, burn it.
They've all been unimpressive. And this is, I mean, I don't want to go to the point of unimpressive, but I am in this mold where it's like, why are we even talking about who's good, who's great, who should be cut, who should be traded? They've all been just sufficient to just this entire season. No one's really broke away and said, I am the best running back. I still think that Singletary is the best running back, but he hasn't had any game-breaking. Like, he had 9 receptions last week, but that wasn't on the ground. Like, anything running backs running the football has been a struggle for this offense since 2020. And we heard Charles Davis mentioning this the entire time on the broadcast. The Bills need to find a way to get these running backs going in the run game, take pressure off of Josh Allen. And then you think back to what the Eagles did today against the Jaguars and how much pressure it took off of Jalen Hurts. It's a way to create sustainable success on offense by shifting the focal point for defenses, shifting what that defense has to be like. Oh, okay, let's focus on Josh Allen this game. Oh, wait, no, they're giving it to Singletary a ton. It doesn't. We can't do that though, because we haven't shown anything on tape that shows, oh, Singletary is a threat out of the backfield when the Bills are in gun offset right. Like, there's nothing that tells you that you need to look out for this look.
And those RPOs that everybody was loving against Tennessee, when everybody's like, this should be the Bills run game. These just awesome 7-yard quick outs to Stephon Diggs. Great. That doesn't work when the defense goes, oh, they're just going to keep doing that and they can't run. Cool. Let's just move up and challenge these wide receivers. Exactly. Miami did it. Baltimore did it. Those aren't available. Now, there's ways around it. Do you go quick screen? Do you go with some tunnel screens? Do you go any type of screen action or type of delayed action? Today. We did. We saw that work several times, both the Singletary. Once in a spread look where Singletary's the boundary receiver coming in on that tunnel screen, one with just a regular running back screen out of the backfield. They need to get more creative with those extension of the run game plays. But at the end of the day, they have to get creative because the run game isn't working, and the run game needs to work. I'm not going to go and say the Bills have to be able to run the ball every game to win a championship, but they need
to be available.
Yes, the threat needs to exist. I love where Pops has had it already. He says, the film room, please fix the run. Yeah, that might be something we dive into. Yeah, you're going to need to have that pivot, especially as you get into today was a good example, right? The weather that you saw today is playoff football weather. And if you're playing outside in Buffalo, or we don't know who's going to win the AFC, and in terms of who's going to be the 1 seed, 2 seed, 3 seed, so on and so forth. But all these teams, unless you're playing the Chargers in LA in their dome, the weather you saw today is a very realistic possibility for Buffalo, Kansas City, Baltimore, Cincinnati.
The one thing I will say about that, though, and I know the whole point you're trying to make, I'm going to play devil's advocate. The whole point you're trying to make is that you have to be ready to run the football in inclement weather, because it's just easier to run the football. It's harder to throw the football in that kind of weather. I think Josh Allen throws the football in that kind of weather better than 30 other quarterbacks in the NFL.
Oh, for sure.
So I think there is a bit of a competitive advantage for the Bills in that regard, but it is still difficult for him to do it in that weather relative to in a dome.
That's my point, is can he do it? Sure. Is it harder? Yes. What are we trying to do? Make things easier for Josh Allen just at some point. And the weather piece is just an additive on top of, you just need to be able to run the ball. Look what happened when Odell, granted they won the Super Bowl, but Odell goes out in that Super Bowl and the Bengals just looked around and went, oh, let's just double team Cooper Kupp, and then they can't run the ball on us and we'll see what happens. And the Rams damn near should have lost that game. Granted, they had a ridiculous call that didn't get called on T. Higgins. They went for a touchdown. But I've gone through the numbers so much with the DVOA teams last year and the top passing teams having close or in a top 10, top 8 rushing DVOA offense. You need that pivot. And I think the Bills are at a point, it's not lost. We're a quarter of the way into the season, and a lot of the issues for the Bills offensive line are chemistry based. I think as they continue to play together healthily, fingers crossed, they will get better. But it's tough right now. We're seeing again for another week where you're seeing points for this Bills offense where everything is just stagnant and everything is it's sludge. It's like they're stuck in the mud and they just can't get going, and you just need some sort of simplification. You need an easy button, and the Bills are losing that easy button because they don't have that run game. Now, maybe they're keeping that card or that bullet in the chamber because that run game is going to be Josh Allen and, QB powers and QB bash come down the stretch, and they're not using it now. So maybe they're not putting it on tape. Maybe they don't want to run Josh Allen into the ground now, and they're trying to keep him fresh and use that down the stretch and into the playoffs. And if that's the case, cool, fun, I like it, but it would still be nice if they could run the ball with their running backs, because the position starts with the word running and it's not working, and it's a little frustrating.
Just makes defense life harder. You just have to spread them even thinner than they're already spread with this passing attack. And like you said, adding Josh Allen as a runner, it spreads them even thinner. But if you add the running back as a runner, it spreads them even thinner than that. You just need to keep adding pressure to the defense.
You need to be able to loosen up. I said it multiple times on Twitter today, like, if defenses are going to play you how defenses are playing the Bills, you got to be able to loosen up, and stretch them a little bit. So you can either do that by pushing the ball vertically, which the weather kind of limited the Bills for a large portion of today doing that. Or you can stretch the front part of the defense by running the ball and making teams come up, or hitting them underneath, or generating explosives underneath and making them work. So that way it opens up that intermediate and it opens up that chunk play territory. Instead, defenses for the most part are able to just cap and keep things over the top and put a roof on things, and they're just playing everything underneath. And you've got good athletes who are able to rally and tackle and move to the football. And you're going to have another defense next week in Pittsburgh who's a very stout defense. They play the run hard. They're good against the pass. They have, in my opinion, I don't know, Jordan Poyer's playing at an elite level, but I think Minkah Fitzpatrick is the best safety in all of football. You got a lot of studs on that Steeler defense, and you're just giving up. I think the problem too is when you look at it, and I mentioned this statement a lot, you're giving up push and penetration in the run game. And though either one of those can be bad on their own, they're giving them both up in tandem over and over and over. And it's hard for any running back to get anything going. Singletary, Moss, Cook. There are some schematic ways to go around it. I've detailed several on Twitter. I don't want to get into the weeds of it too much because we'll hijack this episode, but it's something that needs to be fixed. And if you want potential solutions, feel free to tweet at me at pro__ant, or Kendall at Mirsky Kendall, because we have a lot of thoughts on this issue because it's near and dear to our hearts. And we have been talking about the run game and the offensive line this entire year. And I also want to, I don't want everybody to, again, to think it's all doom and gloom. I think this offensive line will get better. It's just a matter of how quickly. Are they going to be better next week? Or are they going to be better by week 15 or week 10 or by the playoffs? It's just a matter of what does that trajectory look like.
They have all the pieces to do it. They just need to do it.
They do. And I have faith in Aaron Cromer still. So we'll see what happens coming out of the game. Also, huge kudos to Leslie Frazier being able to change the pre to post snap picture in this game.
He has the Ravens number. He has the Ravens number.
He really called a very good game, schemed a lot of things up, and the Bills executed. I'm very excited for the All-22 to see. Also, there was a comment earlier I wanted to get to. Somebody asked about Kaiir Elam. I don't think Kaiir Elam is doing bad at all. I also don't think he's crushing it. I think they've been playing coverages that have given him help, and he's also not being tested. So I don't want anybody to think that I think Kaiir Elam is playing bad. I don't think he's playing amazing, and he's this all-pro, all-world guy. I will say he's been playing solid. He looks like he could be putting some things together, in my estimation. Kendall, I don't know.
He can hang. He can hang. That's really where I am right now. He can hang, and I'm not too worried about him being in the lineup or anything like that, but I haven't seen anything that tells me, oh, he's going to go out there and make plays above the scheme. Like we always talk about, leave his zone, leave his area, leave his man because he sees the quarterback's eyes, things like that. He's still kind of playing within the scheme, within what his responsibilities are, and kind of sticking to that, making sure he can check all those boxes before he kind of goes rogue and does things that he's probably athletically able to do, but he's got to build everything up in the mental repertoire as well.
I will say his speed is showing up against the run and in support plays. His ability to rally to the football. There was a run today. Dobbins bounces it to the outside, and Elam is flat-footed, but he turns and gets on his giddy-up, and he beats Dobbins to the sideline and forces him out. I like the way Kaiir Elam is showing up.
Justice Hill once or twice too today.
He did. You're seeing that real speed and that athleticism be a factor. Chat 69 XYZ best adult dating site. Appreciate your view. Oh, they're gone. I think his athleticism is showing up. I really like the way he's playing against the run, but I think as far as a coverage standpoint, I don't think I've seen enough to be like he's crushing it and locking it down. The Bills are playing a lot of zone. He's not being tasked with a lot, and he's also not getting action. We will see what happens when Trey White comes back, and then what does Dane and Kaiir look like? How healthy is Trey White? Because usually teams don't throw at Trey, they throw at Levi or Dane or whoever that number 2 is. So we're going to see some options. Kendall, if you would be so kind as to pull up a list of 2-2 football teams so we could dive into this 2-1-2. That's right.
You want me to
That's
get
right.
that list up?
That's right. And what we're going to do now is Kendall and I, as I mentioned earlier in this episode, there is a multitude of 2-2 football teams in the NFL right now. And we're at the quarter way of the season. Again, I know that's not an even quarter because there's 17 games now, which is stupid, but whatever. But Kendall and I, we wanted to go team by team and evaluate these 2-2 teams just with a quick, are they real? Are they not? Are they frauds? Are they charlatans? Are they legitimate? Because there's a lot of moving and shaking that's about to happen with how many 2-2 teams there are across the entire NFL.
Contenders or pretenders?
That's what I like. That's a good way to put it. I didn't know how to phrase it. So
I just definitely stole something from ESPN's circle. That's definitely 2010.
That's definitely a good thing. Oh, I like what Jason said. He says, "Ooh, good segment. I see what you're doing. Appreciate you." What do you want to do? What do you want to start? AFC, NFC?
I'm just going to go through how I have it based on the outcomes of today, and I'm just going to go down the list. Okay. So first is Bengals because they played on Thursday night. Yeah. What are your thoughts on the Bengals as of right now?
I think they're a playoff team. I think they're in a similar boat from an offensive line standpoint that the Bills are. I don't think their line is as bad as they were in the beginning of the year. I think this is a line that was still kind of moving forward. What concerns me is they seem like they're still running the same software back from 2021. They're just like go balls to Chase and Higgins. I thought it took them too long in the Miami game to realize how much coverage was shifting towards Jamar Chase, and they had T. Higgins one-on-one constantly with corners that were probably going to lose to T. Higgins, especially after he had that big touchdown. Seems like every time they go under center, that means they're going to run the ball, and it happens like a ton, and then their line has been an issue. But I think because of the studs they have on this team, Burrow, Chase, Higgins, I think Joe Mixon is a good running back. I think their offensive line eventually will get it together enough that they'll be fine and they'll be okay. And then I do like several of the pieces they have on defense. I really like Hubbard. I like Trey Hendrickson. I like Logan Wilson. I love Jesse Bates. Mike Hilton is one of, if not the best slot corner in the NFL. He's up there with Kenny Moore and Taron Johnson, although he does different things. I think they have enough star power and good roster pieces that they're going to be a functioning team in this AFC. I think they're going to contend for the AFC North. I don't have them in that upper echelon of AFC teams, though, right now. So I think they are contenders more than they're pretenders, but I don't holistically believe in them.
I'm in the same boat. I think they are a playoff team. I think they are contenders. I think that the cream will rise to the top in terms of talent, and I think they have that talent, but it still needs to rise. They need some time to figure it all out, get together, play as a team, especially on that offensive line. My biggest caveat to that is obviously the offensive line, like you mentioned, especially playing in such a physical division like the AFC North. Like they're not a great offensive line, and they're playing in a division that really battles in the trenches.
And
so
we're going to find something out next week.
The
they play Baltimore next week. Both teams 2-2. I wanted to get the two comps that I loved for them. RJ says the Bengals feel so 9-8 or 10-7 to me. And then Tim said, since he reminds me of those mediocre Giants teams that made it to the Super Bowl, and those Giants teams are always like 10-6, 9-7.
I like that.
I think that's funny.
I like that comp a lot. That's because those Giants teams had talent, but they just kind of folded from week to week every now and again. There was just kind of, that lacking of consistency every now and again.
They also went through this last year too. Like they lost to the Jets, they lost to the Bears, and then they got hot at the right time. And
don't forget, they're a young team with a young coach. They're still going through learning processes through this entire thing. Even last year, that was all a learning process for them. I think every loss is going to come with some growth.
That's fair.
All right, next team is the Cleveland Browns, who just lost to the Falcons, who will be the next team on deck.
I can't evaluate this team until they have Deshaun Watson.
That is very tough. Yeah.
But I will tell you this. The run game is legit, as always. Chubb is killing it. Their offensive line is fantastic. I'm a little discouraged by the defense. I think this was another year that I thought, granted, Myles Garrett didn't play today because, prayers up for him in that car accident. But they've been banged up a bit, but I just thought Denzel Ward and Newsome and
Mhm.
Delpit and John
JOK.
Johnson and yeah, JOK is awesome. Like I just thought their defense would be better.
Mm.
And I also thought this last year. But for me, I really need to see what this team is going to be with Deshaun Watson. He's a really great player and a horrible human. So I'm rooting against them 1000%. I don't like
Fair
to get,
enough.
I usually like to stay on the field, but I'm not going to hide how much I absolutely despise the Cleveland Browns and want them to fall hardcore on their faces.
Can't
Um,
argue.
but Watson's really good. I'm interested to see how the time off and the game rust affects him.
Mm.
Because if all with all things equal, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the entire NFL, and you're adding him to a team that has the best run game in the NFL, one of the best offensive lines, a pretty good wide receiver one in Amari Cooper.
Yeah.
So I need
Flying
to
under the radar.
yeah, I'm going to hold out reservation until Watson comes back. Right now, if we're evaluating this team, I think they're pretenders because I don't think Jacoby Brissett is good enough to get it done, and this defense I think is failing them.
What I will say, I'll agree with you from the right now. I think they are pretenders. I don't believe in them, but I think this can change from week to week because I think if they continue to keep stealing games, obviously they lost this week, but if they keep stealing games with Jacoby Brissett, that's huge for them. Just keep putting notches in that belt with Jacoby Brissett under center. I believe he's been outperforming expectations, at least relative
Agreed.
to most national media people. And, me and you, I didn't think Brissett was going to do much of anything this year. I thought he's a fine player. He can keep the ship afloat and all that, but you're not necessarily going to win because of him. We saw them win because of him a couple of times already. So I think he's been doing a solid job, but it's really tough to evaluate this team holistically, knowing that they're going to have a different signal.
That's why I'm trying to focus. It's even tough to evaluate the offense because even the running game is going to change a bit with Deshaun Watson coming back.
And that's the thing.
Numbers.
Everything we've known from the Cleveland Browns, even with like Baker Mayfield, has been very run heavy type of team. They got a committee with Hunt and Chubb, and it's a really good committee. But then you get this guy like Watson. Like, are you going to dial back that run game at all, or are you
what does that look
not?
Like?
It's very tough.
That's why I'm focusing on that defense because the defense, granted, defense is related to offense and game script and things playing into their hands, but. And I like what the Falcons are doing on offense, but that Browns defense shouldn't have given up that point total to the Jets in week 2. And I don't think they should have. Given the talent that they have on paper, they should be better. And I think that's where I'm evaluating them from. But yeah, pretenders for me.
All right, moving on to the Falcons then.
Pretenders, although I want to say contenders because I love Drake London and I love Kyle Pitts. Their offense is a unicorn and it's super fun. Like it's just constant like read option, play action, RPOs. Mariota's running
a modern offense.
Like, 1 week they're not using Kyle Pitts at all. The next week he's just split out as the X receiver nonstop going downfield. I really like Drake London. I like Cordero Patterson. I like Algier from BYU.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they have enough pieces to consistently be a problem. And they're 2-2 with AJ Terrell having a pretty rough stretch to start the year.
That being said, regression was going to be pretty fucking obvious.
Yes, because he had an amazing season last year. I think they are pretenders, but I want to say they're pretenders. But I think they're not going to be an easy out for anyone. I think they're going to lose a significant amount of games, but I think they will be in every game because they fight, they play hard.
Yes.
They have a good scheme on offense with Arthur Smith and what he's doing with Mariota. And when they're healthy, they got some fun weapons. Like even Zacchaeus, like you got Zacchaeus as your third option behind Pitts and London. And then you've got Cordero Patterson coming out of the backfield. Like they've got some fun options, and Mariota, similar to Jalen Hurts, can beat you with his legs at any point. He's still got that athleticism. I think they're going to be a tough out for everyone. And in a division that isn't separating itself, I think they could steal a win later from the Saints. They could steal a win from the Panthers. They've got some winnable games on their schedule. I think they're just going to be they're going to be an annoying pest week in and week out for whoever they play. So I think they'll end up having a top 10, probably a top 5 pick in this upcoming draft, but they're going to fight, and kind of like the Lions last year.
That was where I was going to go. Yep. I think they are pretenders for this year, but they are going to be competitive like the Lions were last year in the sense that they are going to be in games. They are building something. They have a clear vision despite everyone this offseason not knowing what the hell their vision was coming into this year. So I think what they are doing is admirable. They're executing what their vision is, despite no one knowing what it is. And they are competing with a young, talented roster in spots. But yeah, showing that they're competitive this early is very encouraging. So contender in terms of their rebuild process, pretender in terms of their 2022 outcome.
I think if you're sitting there and you're a Falcons fan, being here at 2-2, and more importantly, the way that they've played, honestly, they could be sitting here at 3-1 if that week 1 game against the Saints doesn't go wonky at the end.
Yep.
So you got to be sitting here looking at this rebuild thinking like, oh, this is actually kind of cool. Oh, good question from Tim.
You know I'm all about getting Ritter in.
You're all about Ritter. I'm going to keep riding with Mariota right now because I think you want to be able to evaluate London and evaluate Pitts. But once you start to hit like week 10 or 11 and you're sitting there and you're, I don't know, 3-6 or 3-7, 3-8, whatever you are in that stretch, I think you do need to get a real look at Ritter. So I would say the last quarter of the season, you need to see Desmond Ritter play. I would like to put him in right now, but I think Mariota is the better play right now. You're trying to see what you have for Ritter in the future to know if you have to go quarterback in this upcoming draft or not.
Yep.
But when you do that, the team knows that. And I think that just to them, that signals like, okay, guys, we're packing it in for this year because we're putting in Ritter. So I think you need to wait. I would like to see him now so you can get that evaluation, but I think that's got to come later because you're still fighting and competing right now.
No, I think you put it really well. You got to balance the front office with what's going on in the locker room. You got to keep fighting for everything that you can for now. But at some point, like you said, you have to evaluate Ritter because more than likely you're going to have a lottery pick in this draft and you're probably going to try and get a quarterback with it or argue if Ritter is good down the stretch. And that's why you got to play.
And that's a huge piece because if you're sitting there with a top 5 pick and you don't need to take a quarterback, that means you can either take someone's trade and you can acquire more draft capital for this rebuild, or you get an elite player on offense or defense that's not quarterback related, and this rebuild continues to build. So yeah, I think that's a solid play.
Offensive line
and defensive line. Grady Jarrett's a monster, which is fantastic. It's nice to see him come back to form.
That's true. All right, 2-2 Ravens
contenders. Ravens could easily sit here at 4-4. I think Lamar is up there with Josh Allen for the MVP this year. A complete unicorn of a player, similar to what the Bills ask of Josh Allen and the fact that this offense runs through this player. I think as their offensive line continues to get healthier and we start to see Ronnie Stanley, that's a huge piece. Like if once this offensive line gets healthier, and again, Stanley is such a huge domino, that starts to move a lot of things for this offense. I think they're a unicorn of a team. I think they're built offensively to counter what NFL teams want to do, which is play too high and light boxes and play the pass and play against zone running schemes. And the Ravens are like, cool, we're just going to run it right at you with gap runs all the time with one of our awesome running backs or our awesome running quarterback. And then if you try to play against that, we're going to use play action. We're going to gash you. I think the Ravens are very much a real team. I think their defense, again, they're still trying to work in Kyle Hamilton and get things ready and get things, gelling from that perspective. But I think they're better than people are giving them credit for. I think the Ravens are a contender.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we have much more I have much more to go over there, considering we already talked about them in the Bills-Ravens segment, and you summed it up pretty nicely there. So
thank you.
Move on to the Seahawks at 2-2, who have surprised a lot of people, including myself, just getting 2 wins to this point, even though obviously one of them was against Russ's Lions today. Still 2 wins and the first one was against the Broncos, was it? So, they're stacking together competitive games. Geno looks good. The offensive line looks great once Russ leaves. I really think this team has a shot. What do you think?
I'm super torn on the Seahawks because I want to start with their skill position players on offense real quick. I like DK Metcalf. I like Tyler Lockett. I love the combination of Penny and Kenneth Walker.
Yeah. Haven't seen much Walker to this point yet.
No, he was banged up early in the year, but he, had some plays that popped against the Falcons.
Yeah.
Cross is playing better as a rookie at tackle than I thought he was potentially going to play.
Lucas is shining from Washington State,
which is a nice added piece. And they had some issues up front. Again, you mentioned it already, but we're sitting here talking about it like that. Russ goes, and now their offensive line looks like a little better in terms of protection.
And is that elevating the play of Geno, or is Geno actually just playing competent football?
I think he's played well. He's making some
Yeah.
good throws. He's making some good decisions. Again, this is a guy who he doesn't have a ton of playing experience and hasn't crushed it, but he has seen a lot of football, either playing or watching, like all jokes aside, and
Yeah.
he looked good in spot duty last year. I'm confident in Geno to do enough with this team. My issue is I don't know if this team is good enough around him to continue to play at the level they're playing at. I know they're sitting there at 2-2, but I feel like eventually I think even though we knocked Jamal Adams, what they ask him to do, it's at least a wild card from a pass rush perspective and how he's able to play in the box. Him going down, and you're relying on Quandre Diggs. I know Woolen had a pick 6 today, but he's been picked on from time to time, although he will get better. I don't think I believe in this defense enough.
That's where I am.
To make them a contender. I do think they will be a tough out. I like it. It's funny too. Granted, they're under, new management on defense now, but they've moved to more of the 2 high coverage world and away from their, cover 3 single high region of boom
cover
days.
3 life.
And there's no more Bobby Wagner, and you're sitting there running with, Jordan.
Got a lot younger on defense.
Yes. But I like when they picked up Uchenna Nwosu. He was somebody who I had earmarked for the Bills. I think they'll flirt with 500 football. I don't think they're going to be a team that gets blown out. I don't think they're a team that makes the playoffs, but I don't think they're in full rebuild. I'm going to say, so they're not a contender. I also don't think they're a pretender. I think they're an annoying pest. If that's a middle ground answer.
We got to do this moving forward for when 3-3 comes around.
I think that'll be solid. So I see them end up I think they finish like 6-11, 7-10, something like that. Maybe they steal one from the Rams or the Niners, and make things a little murky in that NFC West for somebody. But I think long term, I don't think they have the defense to keep them in the games.
No, I think that's fair. I definitely question their defense and how much they're relying on youth to contribute right away, especially in the secondary. I think, combination of Kobe Bryant and Tariq Woolen is definitely going to come back to bite you.
Bryant's had some real rough stretches at points this year.
Yeah, exactly. So I think obviously getting 45 put up on you by the Lions, and don't get me wrong, the Lions are no slouch on offense.
But no Amon-Ra St. Brown or DeAndre Swift.
So you got to bake that into the evaluation. I agree with you. I think it's admirable that they have been as competitive as they are. Another team kind of like the Falcons, where a lot of people didn't know what the offseason vision was for them. Are they trying to tear it down and rebuild, or are they trying to stay competitive? And I think they're in this spot where they're fighting to stay competitive, even though they probably should have rebuilt. And now they're in this pest category where they're just kind of mediocre.
And I tell you something, their next stretch of games at the Saints, winnable, versus the Cardinals, winnable, at the Chargers, kind of winnable, versus the Giants, at the Cardinals. So their next 5 games, you can make a realistic case that they win 4 out of those 5 games. And they're sitting there at 6-3. That's a very realistic possibility for the Seahawks team.
Fair enough. Funny enough, the next team is the Chargers at 2-2. As you just say, the Seahawks could win against the Chargers. What are your thoughts?
I'm annoyed at their stupid offense, and they don't push the ball vertically down the field. They just want to live in quick game and live underneath. That being said, I think it's okay to live in that world and push the ball downfield from time to time with Mike Williams, but it's hard to live in that world when you lose Keenan Allen. I think that's been a significant hindrance to the Chargers offense. My bigger question is the injury pieces, especially on the offensive line. They bring in Zion Johnson. That right side was a question mark at best coming into this offseason, but they bring in Zion, and you're thinking, okay, left tackle through, Tim says, I'm also noted the Chargers injuries. So you're thinking left tackle through right guard, you're okay. The only question mark is really right tackle. You can give chip help, you can give tight end help, so on and so forth. Slater goes down. He's put on IR. Slater could come back towards the end of the year. He's got bicep surgery, but that really concerns me for a team that had offensive. Team that had offensive line issues last year. Now you lose a really good piece and an important piece at that left tackle. They've struggled to get the running game going this year. They put a cap on their own offense by not being able to push the ball downfield. Joey Bosa is out 8 to 10 weeks with a groin injury. Their defense seems to really ebb and flow. One week you've got great coverage and run fits, and the next week you're just kind of all over the place. Like the fact that today's game against the Texans, granted the Texans play hard and give teams problems, but the Chargers should have boat raced the Texans. And I just feel like, again, we're in another year with the Chargers where it's like offseason is
performing
the Chargers. Yep. And then, the season starts and you're just like, oh.
I do think it's a little bit of all of us over inflating and expecting a lot from the Chargers.
Oh, it's definitely really where they are versus expectation.
That's fair. But you are right. I think even falling in between where they are and those expectations was realistic, and they still haven't even fallen in between.
I'm still going to give them a contender label, though, for me. I just think with Herbert, Keenan Allen's going to come back. I think you have enough on this offense to kind of patchwork some things together and work around Rashawn Slater. I think they're a contender from a division standpoint. I think you can still make a case that they can win the AFC West, but I think they're a peg down from the top tier in the AFC right now. And I do have a lot of questions that seem to continue to not be answered. Today's performance was a little disappointing. They very realistically could have lost that game. They give up a huge run to Dameon Pierce. And they got gouged a little bit. They got beat deep. They got beat in a lot of ways by Davis Mills and Brandon Cooks and Pierce and that whole offensive grouping. Although, give credit to the Texans. They got some good things working, especially the left side of the line with Tunsil and Kenyon Green. Man, they got some real things moving there in Houston. So I'm going to give them the pretender ranking, but I am disappointed given my expectations. But I want to see what happens when Keenan Allen comes back. I don't think he's a cure-all, but I think he moves the needle in a very positive direction given their offensive flow and identity. But I guess the question really is how you feel, considering Justin Herbert is your love of loves.
I agree with you. They are contenders. I think the Keenan Allen thing is going to be big for them, especially with the quick game stuff. Like you said, I mean, he is so big for them in that short to intermediate area, and not having him is a big loss in that area.
He's a really good receiver.
Exactly. It makes it really difficult to attack that short to intermediate area. Ultimately, you have quarterback play like that, and you see him play as like not 100% as he is and still as effective as he is. This team's always going to have a shot. So I think they're a contender, especially like you said, breaking it down from a division perspective coming into this season. I think just about everyone but the Chiefs have fallen short of expectations in that division. Broncos short of expectations, Chargers short of expectations, Raiders definitely short of expectations. So I think that division, if it's not the winning of that division, I think they could finish in second and easily secure a wild card spot. I went to school in Boston.
I think they make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think they'll make the playoffs too.
Which is scary then, because if they make the playoffs as like a late a low seed, but all of a sudden they're rolling into the playoffs with Rashawn Slater coming back and Joey Bosa coming back.
Right.
Who knows what they could do? They could make some noise as like that 6 seed, 7 seed, 8 seed.
Exactly. They just got to figure it out, build some chemistry, figure out their identity.
That's fair.
Only time. All right, next 2-2 team is the Tennessee Titans, and I have a feeling we're going to agree on this one. What are your thoughts? Yeah,
I'm out. I didn't believe in them last year. They
weirdest had one seed in the AFC ever.
That's it. They had a stretch where when they beat the Rams and they beat the Chiefs or they beat the Bills, they were just living off of. I really like their simulated pressure stuff on defense. I like it a lot. Granted, it has.
I don't think anything my issues have to do with scheme.
No, I like their scheme, but that's my issue. Like
what they're putting on the field.
I like their simulated pressure packages on defense, but they relied so much last year. They were just getting big play after big play from Simmons, Byard, and Harold Landry. All three of those guys had stud years.
Their stars show out when they succeed.
They are a stars and scrubs team. And they just had a stretch where all their stars were just playing like stars over and over. I didn't think that was sustainable. I don't think it's sustainable this year, especially with Harold Landry being out, who was also a huge part of their simulated package or simulated pressure package. And then on offense, you lose A.J. Brown. Burks has looked okay, but I definitely don't think
he got carted off today.
He did. And even if he wasn't, even if he hadn't gotten carted off and was still what he's been, you're not a better team this year losing A.J. Brown and replacing him with Treylon Burks. Maybe you are in the future, but definitely not in 2022.
Right.
I like Bobby Trees. Derrick Henry is still Derrick Henry, but they've got injuries up front. I would say Pops just said it right there. Titans are a different O-line than last year. They are. They've got injuries. They're banged up. They're not that same group. Tannehill looks like he's come back to earth a little bit and looks more like Miami Tannehill than he does Tennessee Tannehill, which again, he was a function and a fit for that offense. You just run play action or RPO or read option and hit A.J. Brown on slants and overs and crossers, and you just go from there. This offense has changed a lot. This defense has been banged up. I just don't think relying on your stars to make plays every single week is a sustainable model for success. I see them here at 2-2. I think the Jags are the best team in the AFC South. That doesn't necessarily mean they will win the AFC South. I think the Titans are going to be around in that playoff hunt and in that AFC South division title picture, but I think they are a pretender.
Yep. No, I'm with you. I don't have much to add. I mean, yeah, I see the Titans in a very similar vein. Wildcat.
I love the.
I don't know if they'll get the Wildcat. All right, let's move on. Another quick team. I'm assuming the 2-2 Chicago Bears.
Pretenders. I think they also hate Justin Fields. Like, I don't get it. Anything that they're doing there. He had a really nice bomb today to Mooney early in the game, but
and then everything just kind of went downhill.
Tanked. And that today was a winnable game because I don't really believe in the Giants like that. And they've got some cool pieces on defense. Like Roquan is sweet. Eddie Jackson is good.
Jackson's coming back into his like ball hawking phase.
Little bit. Jalen Johnson has been sweet. We both like Kyler Gordon. Brisker has been fun. But they lose Akeem Hicks. They lose Khalil Mack. They still have Robert Quinn, but they're kind of cobbling things together on defense. And then offensively,
is together.
But offensively, they don't have. It's really frustrating because you take Justin Fields, and then I think it's like the question of, okay, they're trying to figure out if Justin Fields is the guy, but then they surround him with nothing, which I think they will hopefully this upcoming season. But there's just so many variables because the offensive line isn't there. The weaponry isn't there. David Montgomery is probably the best non-Justin Fields piece. Not even saying Fields is the best, but the best offensive piece on the Bears is either
but when he's not on the field, Khalil Herbert plays better than him.
Yeah, and so you got this cool running back grouping, but neither of them are really elevating the offense to help Fields. And then you've got Mooney and Pringle. Cole Kmet is fun, but they can't get Cole Kmet the ball. They're pretenders. It's really frustrating to see what's going on in Chicago. I really hope they spend some money this offseason and try and figure out what this team is going to be. Like, they might have to get rid of Roquan. Do they trade him this year? Like, Fields shows up sometimes and then other times doesn't, and I still don't know if it's him or his surrounding cast, and it's frustrating the hell out of me that they haven't done enough to help us figure that out. I do think it's a little bit of both, which is even more frustrating. I do think they're pretenders, and they're pissing me off.
I agree with you. They're pretenders. I do want to throw in the caveat that I think life is tough for Rochester native GM Ryan Poles for Chicago. I think that is tough. I think he inherited a terrible situation, and I agree with you. He's not isolating variables. He's not making his life easier to evaluate Justin Fields and see if he is the franchise quarterback, but he had so many roster holes to fill. He had to do what he could in a place where you're not bringing in free agents and being like, yeah, this is a really favorable place to come in aside from the money that we're giving you. So his life was going to be tough. I feel for them in that regard, but I mean, in terms of 2022, they are pretenders. And I think, you just kind of have to shift your focus to 2023, get everything you can on offense to isolate those variables and evaluate Fields in 2023, because I think you're only going to get a shell of that evaluation from this year.
And you're still paying for what you gave up to acquire Khalil Mack. You didn't necessarily get that back and trading him to the Chargers. There's just so many questions football is better when the Bears are sweet. Like having Bears, and I'm tired of seeing like Bears-Packers games on primetime when we know the Bears suck. And I think that's super unfortunate. Like one of my favorite players of all time is Brian Urlacher. Like I love those Bears squads with him and Briggs and Charles Tillman and Tommy Harris up front and Adewale Ogunleye and
never forget Hester.
Oh, he was my boy. I'm a Miami guy. Of course. I have a Devin Hester jersey.
I can't believe that he wasn't one of the players you mentioned.
Oh, he was coming. You didn't let me finish.
Sure.
Yeah. And then my favorite, of course, Rex Grossman. Just kidding. Yeah. Like It sucks when you don't have like those I think the Bears are one of those like pillars of the NFL in terms of like
No,
franchises.
that's a fair
And
point.
football is better when they're a better football team. You have that Chicago mystique, and it's really unfortunate to see where they are as a team. And it's more frustrating again because we're sitting here applauding and lauding the Lions rebuild and the Atlanta Falcons rebuild and what the Jags have done. And the Bears just are so many levels below that. Like, I think you ever seen Moneyball?
Of course.
I just think of like the Billy Bean thing where it's like, oh, there's like all these teams and then there's like 6 layers of shit and then there's us.
There's
like that's what the Bears are. Like, and it's just like you don't need to be there. Like why are you there? And it's frustrating.
I feel you. All right, moving on to one of the teams you just mentioned, a team we've talked about a bit, the Jaguars.
Ooh, contenders for the AFC South. I don't know what noise they can make come playoff time because every core piece on this team is young and unproven, especially from a playoff big game clutch moment standpoint. But you got Doug Peterson at the helm as the head coach here, who's won a Super Bowl and who's had success in Philadelphia. I really like what Trevor Lawrence is doing. He's got all the tools and the package to succeed as a quarterback in the NFL. He's got the arm, he's got the head, he's got the mobility, he's got the poise.
He's got the hair.
Tremendous hair. Sunshine from Remember the Titans. Absolutely phenomenal. They've got a lot of good pieces. I like what they've done with Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, even though we all made fun of them for giving them so much money coming into this year. I like the rotation with Robinson and ETN in the backfield. They're getting quality out of this offensive line. Scherf was a real nice addition. So I like what they're doing on offense. They bootlegs and screens and play action, and they run like a little bit of everything. They are such a nice cornucopia of offense. Like they dabble in everything, and it's not like they dabble in everything and it all sucks and they're just throwing crap against the wall.
They execute
a little bit of everything, and they execute with all of it. So I like what they're doing on offense, but it really comes to the defense for me. This front is nasty. They're violent. They're physical. That's just on the defensive line. And then you got a Luakon and Devin Lloyd who can run with anyone.
Dude, they are just a fast defense.
They're fast. They're violent. They all convert speed to power. You've got some technique. You've got a budding star edge in Josh Allen coming through. Trayvon Walker is playing well. The corners are playing well. Tyson Campbell and Griffin. I think there's a lot to like on this defense. I think this team as a whole, there's a lot to like. I think the defense is real, especially in the front. I am a believer in the Jacksonville Jaguars right now. I think they're better than just a 2-2 team. And for me, they're the best team in the AFC South.
Yeah, I think they're a contender for sure. I think you put it really well earlier in the show, talking about how they probably are the favorites at this point, the front runners to win the AFC South. I think they have all the talent to do it, but like you said, really, really young core. Not sure if the consistency will show up from week to week.
Yeah.
Obviously, small sample size. We're only 4 weeks into the season. A lot of stuff to like, but is it sustainable from young guys that haven't proven it throughout, years and years in the league? So that's really the only question for me with the Jaguars. I do think they are the front runners for the AFC South. So it's really hard to say anything other than contenders in that regard, but I think they have to continue checking boxes.
And they have a stretch next several games. Texans, Colts, Giants, both winnable. We could be sitting here looking at 5-2. Then they play the Broncos. That's winnable. The Raiders, that's winnable. Both the Raiders and Broncos are at home. So you've got West Coast teams that have to travel to the East, which is an advantage. And then they're at the Kansas City Chiefs. So there's a chance they could be rolling into the game in Kansas City on November 13th at 3-2, 4-2, 5-2, 6-2. There's a realistic chance that they're rolling into Kansas City at 7-2. I don't think they're going to be 7-2.
But they have a chance.
But they have a realistic chance. But again, even if that's a realistic chance, so then if you're sitting there at 6-3 or 5-4, as long as they continue to stay above 500, I think 11-6, 10-7 gets this division. And I think they're very much in contention for that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I completely agree. All right, next one. We got 3 teams left. We got the New York Jets at 2-2.
I'm actually super torn on what to think of with the Jets. I think they're pretenders, but in terms of where this team is and what the rebuild is, like their defense, I thought their defense would be better last year. Then they come in this year and it's still not great, especially starting out against, similar to what we talked about the Browns. I thought the Browns defense should have played better against the Jets. I thought the Jets defense should have played better against the Browns offense. Sauce has looked good. Johnson has been hit or miss. I really liked
today.
Yeah, he did. I really liked both of those rookies coming out. We'll see who they can be, but they're starting to kind of come into their own a little bit ever since Robert Saleh said he was going to start taking names and keep receipts from everybody who doubted them a little bit. I do think they are pretenders in terms of this year, but I think if you're a Jets fan, you're excited. I think Zach Wilson is showing a little bit. Breece Hall and Michael Carter are a cool running back combination.
Yeah, that's fun.
Garrett Wilson is sick. And the fact that he's emerging as the number one means Elijah Moore is your number two, which is awesome. I like what they're getting out of Tyler Conklin. He's somebody who I wanted the Bills to bring in this offseason. I like Conklin. And I think you've got some pieces on defense that you can start to build around as well, overall. So I don't think this is a team that's going to make too much noise in 2022. I do think they are in a similar spot, again, because you've got Sauce and you've got, Jordan Whitehead is actually playing pretty well as well. And then you've got Mosley and Quan Alexander and Quinnen Williams. I think they've got enough to maybe hover around 500 for a decent part of this season. I think they will be a tough out for a majority of the team. Somebody asked it earlier, especially if I don't know what the health of Tua is going to be and if he plays or not next week. I do think it's not crazy. I think the Jets realistically could beat the Miami Dolphins next week. And the Jets move to 3-2 and Dolphins drop to 3-2. Just seems like they've been a different team these last couple of weeks. I still think we need to see who this team is with Zach Wilson because it's a much different offense than what it was with Joe Flacco. Really nice come from behind victory today to kind of ice that. So I think they're pretenders, but I think there's a lot to like if you're a Jets fan.
Seeing Zach Wilson make more good decisions than bad decisions under pressure against the Steelers defense did a lot for me today.
Yes.
I will say I think they are pretenders for this season, but I see them in a similar vein that I was talking about the Falcons, where they are pretenders in terms of what their final outcome for this season is. But I believe in what they're doing in terms of their rebuild. And I think that they will be competitive through a lot of games this season. I think you put up a good point about how they're probably going to stick around 500 for a majority of the season.
And it won't be pretty. It won't be pretty, but they'll be around.
But and that's how they're going to be, not even on the win-loss record, but even in every game. Like, it's not going to be pretty. This game against the Steelers, it wasn't pretty.
Oh, super ugly.
But they stuck around. They did what they had to do, and it kind of seems like a projection of their coach. They don't care how ugly it is, but they're going to do what they have to do to win. And if they don't, so be it. They fought hard. And I think that's everything you need to know about a team in a rebuild. If they have that kind of culture, that's going to go a long way in the future. So I believe in their rebuild, and I like a ton of the young pieces that they have on their roster, but I think they're a year away. And I think we're going to learn a lot about Zach Wilson this year. I think he's going to take a lot of strides, and a lot of people are going to have to eat their words.
Very fair. And also keep in mind, Mekhi Becton out to start the year before the year even started. Huge.
Their offensive line is decimated.
Yeah.
Decimated.
Very unfortunate. And they're still able to kind of cobble some things together. Shout out to Elijah Vera Tucker, one of my draft crushes from last year. Who I
the only one still standing on that offensive line.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, seriously. All right. 2-2. I'm very interested to know what you think of the 2-2 Cardinals.
They're so DeAndre Hopkins dependent on offense. If they can just tread water until Hopkins comes back, I think they could be a wild card team. Not a wild card team that I'll have any faith in whatsoever because they are a mess. This offense is still very much the Kyler go make a play offense.
Kyler Scurry play.
Yeah, just go scurry and make something happen. Just pull something out of your butt and just make something happen. Oh, cool. Crazy completion. All right, cool. We won. Ugly win today against the Carolina team that is also in shambles. I don't know how Matt Rule still has a job. It's just chaos over there. They kind of didn't commit to a rebuild, but didn't really commit to being a contender and kind of force their own hand and handcuff themselves. It's just not great. You got DJ Moore laughing in interviews because Matt Rule says the receivers have to help out Baker. It's just chaos over there. I do not believe in the Arizona Cardinals, but given again, once DeAndre Hopkins comes back, because they don't change anything on offense. They don't put players.
No, they do the same thing every single time. They run about 5-6 plays.
They only line up Hopkins to the left. He's always in that spot. He doesn't go anywhere else or do anything else. And if he goes out, they just put somebody else and leave him there. It's such a weird static.
Almost every play is a broken play.
Yes. They're just a very weird static kind of offense. And then defensively, it's a shame because I really, 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 really like Budda Baker a ton. And even Murphy Bunting is okay, but JJ Watt isn't who JJ Watt really used to be. They could have kept Devondre Campbell. They didn't. They finally just figured out what Isaiah Simmons could be and that he should be like a safety. It's just so weird how they manage players. But again, they're another team where if you look at who they're going to be with Hopkins coming back after the suspension, they got the Eagles next week, but then it's Seahawks, Saints, Vikings, Seahawks again. So they're in a position to tread water.
3 of those.
Yeah, they could. And then they're in a position to tread water, be above 500. I think Hopkins comes back. He has to miss the first 6
9
games.
or 10 or something, I thought. I thought it was 8 games.
Maybe it is 8. Tim A just asked it, when is Hopkins back? But at the end of the day, like, I'm actually going to look it up right now. I think they can tread water until he comes back. He comes back. It's a 6-game suspension. That's what I thought. 6 games for testing positive for PEDs. So yeah, if they can just tread water until week 7, I think this could be a team that again makes it to the playoffs. Based on their offensive line and their defense, I think they would be an early out in the playoffs once again, unless you just get some absolutely miraculous performance from Kyler, which would also have to coincide with the online service for Call of Duty going down for the week, which I don't think that is going to happen. So I think they'll make the playoffs or at least contend for it from a statistical and record standpoint, but I do not believe in this team whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't believe in this team philosophically. I think they just draft and acquire good football players without thinking about scheme fit in really any way at all on defense or offense. More so on defense than offense. But yeah, this
I don't get how they just ran that same offensive line back, basically. I don't get how
it makes no sense. Absolutely no sense. That
and
offensive
failed
line
down the stretch. And then they go into the playoffs and get worked against the Rams. And then they're just like, you know what? It's cool. We'll just run this group back.
I still can't believe they didn't draft Elijah Vera Tucker. Actually, I don't know if he fell to them that year.
I can't believe a lot of things when it comes to the Cardinals.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point. I think they are contenders because they have an overwhelming amount of talent, and that talent raises them above that scheme regularly, and it saves Cliff Kingsbury and Vance Joseph regularly. But ultimately, like you said, I don't think this is a team you can believe in come postseason time.
Ooh, even everybody knows you don't blitz Patrick Mahomes. The Cardinals' identity for these last several years, they are a heavy blitz team. I think they're regularly like 43% or higher. They blitz nonstop. And part of me respects it because like you're like, nope, this is our identity. This is who we are. This is what we're going to do. But the fact that they didn't tailor their game plan at all to their opponent just made me think they are like, nope, this is who we are. Oh, it's a square peg, round hole this week. Doesn't matter. That is who we are. I just thought that was lazy and foolish, especially it's not like it was like week 7 and you got to put the game plan together. That was your opening week game. You couldn't redesign some defensive plays and schemes the offseason leading into week 1. Like that was just so lazy and foolish. And they got
3 years now, the Cardinals have been square peg, round hole. They see things one way and that's the only way. And it gets projected all over that franchise.
It's just so frustrating. That was so lazy to me. Like I get it that that's your identity, but you had all off season to prep for this week 1 game. You couldn't just throw in some new wrinkles for week 1 and then go back your identity in week 2. Like
they were.
They were. That's exactly it. And I get it. Live by the sword, die by the sword. Do this to your camera. You moved and it made you blurry. And so part of me respects it. Like live by the sword, die by the sword. But yeah, you're still blurry. Go put your hand into your camera to get it focused and then bring it back. I don't know. I give up with you.
Literally never happened to me.
I just don't. Yeah, I don't understand their philosophy with a lot of things. Team building, execution. It's frustrating right now for the Cardinals. So I think they'll hover, but I don't believe.
All right. Last team. We made it. Denver Broncos.
I'm frustrated with this team too. I don't know what happened to Russell Wilson. Actually, I do know. It's Nate Hackett and it's also Russell Wilson. They're both equally at fault. I think it's still going to take some time for this team to come together. You're so blurry. There you go. Fixed. Don't move. And they've got talent. I like Sutton. I like Judy. I like Garrett Bowles. I like Javonte Williams. I like Melvin Gordon. I like some of their other linemen. Like I love Patrick Surtain II. I love Justin Simmons. Chubb is a nice piece and nice factor. You got Randy Gregory. Like Darby's okay. They've got so many options, but it just seems like the defense is real and the defense is performing well. That being said, they could have really helped themselves by beating the Raiders today. They lose to the Raiders today. Tim comes in and says, yeah, I still don't understand what Hackett has done to deserve being a defensive coordinator.
He
This was funny.
Aaron Rodgers that one time.
That's true. Pop said rain is affecting Kendall's camera now. That's very funny. Yeah, Hackett basically hitched his wagon to a really good quarterback and got himself a job, much like Joe Philbin did when he was the offensive coordinator for the Packers and got himself a job in Miami. I think they make the playoffs. But I'm not confident in this team. I thought this AFC West would be more of a bloodbath than it is. I'm very interested to see what happens when they play the Kansas City Chiefs. That is my big measuring stick for them right now, especially now seeing them sit there at 2-2, who they've lost against, who they've beaten. They have the Colts next week. They play the Chargers the week after that. So that Chargers game will be a bit of a measuring stick. I think Keenan Allen will be back by then. But then again, after that Chargers game, they have the Jets, the Jags, and the Titans. All three of those games are super winnable, even though they have to go to the East Coast for the Jags and Titans. I think their schedule is enough that'll keep them in contention. I think they're another team that finishes somewhere in that 10-7 record as the median range. I think they make the playoffs, and they could make noise if they start to gel by playoff time. But I'm not feeling it with the Broncos right now. I think they're kind of a mess.
I think they're pretenders. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs.
You don't think they'll make it?
No, I don't. I think
their schedule's enough to keep them in it.
I don't care. They're playing down to they're playing down to their competition. I don't really care what the competition is. They're not playing to their level. They're playing to the opposition's level, and that's not good when your talent is better than your opponents and you're still playing down to that level. They're doing it week to week. They're not.
I don't even know if they're playing down to their opponents. I think they're just playing down. Like they're just like it's just bad.
They're not playing good football, and on top of not executing well, they're also not being coached well, and the game isn't being managed well by Hackett, and play calls are bad. So it's like everything is working against them right now. So it's really tough for me to sit here and say that they're going to be in the playoffs. I think they're going to be one of those like 8-9, 9-8 teams, and I think they're going to fall short. I think they're going to fall short.
You know what? I could see it as well. I think eventually the talent wins out a bit. I know Simmons being on IR really affects things for them, but he will be back at some point. They're a conundrum in a whole nother frustrating way. Oh, Tim comes in with some guesses. He says Chiefs, Chargers, Bills, Dolphins, Jags, Ravens, Bengals. If I were to guess the AFC playoff picture right now, I like where your head's at, Tim. I think that's very fair at the quarter.
Takes out the Broncos.
That does take out the Broncos. And then again, so if you're sitting there, who drops out? Is it the Jags? Is it Cincinnati? Is it Miami? I think a lot of it for Miami is going to come down to how long Tua's back is hurt. And what Teddy Bridgewater looks like and what Tua looks like when he does come back. So there's some wild cards in there, no pun intended. But yeah, it's going to be, I think Denver's schedule is friendly enough that it keeps them in contention, but they look very poor on the offensive side of the football. Nothing's clicking. I don't even know if they're letting Russ cook or not, but whatever they're doing, it's bad.
Whatever he's cooking, I don't want it.
No, it's gross. It looks like slop, and I'm not a fan of that. It's not great. But I think this was a fun exercise evaluating all the 2-2 teams.
No, that was good.
And kind of seeing what things are like. And now we get to arguably, I think, our favorite segment on the show as we start to wind things down. Player of the day, rookie of the day, drive of the day. Kendall, you're first. Player of the day, who you got?
Well, I can't go with Lamar Jackson for the third straight week.
I was going to say, are you going to go with Lamar Jackson again?
He didn't play well enough.
TJ
Hawkinson. Hawkinson with his coming out party for the season. I mean, 8 receptions on 12 targets for 179 yards, 2 touchdowns, made all type of plays, simple curl routes, overball curls, red zone, whip routes, extension catches on corner routes. He was doing everything for them. And a lot of that was, because St. Brown wasn't
because of his long hair, his flowing golden locks.
Well, I guess that's part of it.
That's where his power comes from.
Lawrence. So yeah, it's all created.
Everybody needs long hair. Everyone in the NFL needs long hair.
So it's encouraging to see him finally find that connection with Goff, because it took a little. Like, they've been on different pages up until this game. And like I said, I'm sure a lot of this increased target share had to do with Amon-Ra St. Brown being out.
Yeah.
But the Lions should really consider utilizing Hawkinson as both a blocker and split out wide like they did this game, move him around in motion, put him in condensed slot position so he could still technically be run blocking. Whatever they want to do to mix it up, I think they need to utilize him a little bit more as a receiver, or else they're just scratching the surface with what they have in TJ Hawkinson. But cheers to him. He had a great week.
Well played. Well played. Oh, Walter comes in and says Hawkinson over Goff. Goff was missing his wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, and RB1. Yeah, threw for almost 400 yards with 378, the 4 tutties, interception.
Hey, just for my argument, I mean, like 70 of those yards came from a run of Hawkinson's after the catch. So
that's very fair. Hawkinson was balling today. I like where Pops' head is at. Player of the day, Jordan Poyer. Rookie of the day, Khalil Shakir. Drive of the day, the last Bills drive for the win. I like where your head is at.
Not a homer.
No, not. I thought of going with the Lions game. I'm going to stick with who we talked about in the beginning. I'm going with Miles Sanders today. Okay, this Eagles team, the weather was rainy and blustery, kind of similar to what was going on in Baltimore. The pass was struggling from time to time with Jalen Hurts. This Jags front was getting after it. The Eagles really had to pivot and kind of lean on that run. Miles Sanders, 27 carries, 134 yards, an average of 5 yards a clip, 2 touchdowns, a long of 35, but he had multiple 10-yard runs. He also had 2 catches for 22 yards on 3 targets, including a real nice 16-yarder. I think he showed like he was Penn State Miles Sanders. He showed that he could be I've never understood why that the Eagles never really bought into him as a true RB1. I thought he could. He was a trade target of mine for the Bills last year if they didn't believe in him. I think he's electric. I think there's a lot that he can do. And for a 4-0 Eagles team that has shown that they've been able to win in a variety of ways, today they had to lean on the ground. And Miles Sanders literally put the team on his back and just ran and carried this team to 4-0 against a good Jags team in a game that was muddy, not literally, but also figuratively in terms of who was going to win this game. And I thought, again, he just was able to really put the team on his back, perform, execute. Miles Sanders was my player of the day for the 4-0 Philadelphia Eagles. And now we go to rookie of the day. Kendall, who you got?
Probably going to steal it again for you. Dameon Pierce gets my back-to-back rookie of the week. Yeah. I mean, 14 rushes for 131 yards, including that 75-yard touchdown. I mean, just a huge day for the rookie. And even if we did this exercise last week, even if you take away that 75-yard run, 13 rushes for 56 yards, which is still over 4 yards per carry. So
against a Chargers defense that's improved with their front and was playing the run because they weren't respecting Davis Mills.
Which they should start to do a little bit. Davis Mills is putting together some stuff.
Davis Thrills. It's not just a nickname anymore.
But yeah, Dameon Pierce putting together, stacking 2 good weeks together. I mean, you got to notice that. 4th round pick. A lot of people sleeping on him, including the Florida Gators coaching staff.
I love that he had 6 catches for 8 yards. Just as all these checkdowns and double offs that weren't getting anywhere. You picked Pierce last week. I strayed. I was going to see if you're going to pick him again today. Yeah, that 75-yarder was electric. Bob says, how did Pierce last so long in the draft? He didn't get a ton of burn at Florida. Didn't get a lot of usage. There wasn't a ton of tape. He didn't have a high amount of snap share, but his snaps when he got the ball generated buzz.
Efficient.
Yeah, he was very efficient. That's an excellent way to put it. And yeah, I think that 75-yarder was nice, but I think it's the way he continues to win. He's got some long speed, but he's a punishing runner. He runs through contact. He consistently falls forward, it seems. He's a tough out to tackle. Like, you have to earn a tackle on Dameon Pierce no matter how you bring him down. He continues to make teams work in a variety of ways. So I think that really stands out. So a 2-time winner for Rookie of the Day, Dameon Pierce. Now, what we're going to have to do, we'll keep track of these. At the end of the year, we're going to have to do Player of the Year for us, Rookie of the Year, and Drive of the Year as well. We'll compile it all at the end of the year awards. All right, now, Drive of the Day. There's several contenders. I have 2 real ones. I had several, but 2 really. I'm just going to go with whichever one you don't pick.
I have 2 real ones, 2 fake ones, and one I'm just going to talk about for no reason.
Drives of the day. No, I nailed it down to 2. I'm going to go with whichever one you don't pick because I feel like you're going to pick one of them.
Okay, fair enough. I picked the Jets game-winning drive.
Okay.
Was that even on yours?
Yes, it was. That was one of my 2.
Okay. Just curious. So starting with 3 minutes, 34 seconds left in the 4th quarter, 10 plays, 65 yards, ending in a touchdown, of course. took them 3 minutes and 18 seconds, leaving minimal time on the clock. I thought Wilson made some gutsy throws over the middle through zone coverage, took some smart checkdowns as well, just kept the chains moving. And then even after an illegal block penalty in the middle of that drive, put them back to 1st and 20. He took the check down really smart, took that check down, gets 11 yards from Michael Carter on that play, gives you 2nd and 9, keeps you ahead of schedule in terms of being 1st and 20. Next play, threads the needle to Corey Davis for a 17-yard pass, just a flick of the wrist. I mean, the dude's got arm talent. And then from there, they get into the red zone with 1:10 left and 3 timeouts because of how efficiently they went down the field. 3 timeouts still inside the 20. From there on, it's a combination of Michael Carter and Breece Hall to get the ball into the end zone. So really great job of how they managed the drive from, Mo Salah down to the field and how everyone was executing on the field, led by Wilson and everything. But really great job by everyone. Good balance of run and pass, and then execution and vision for how they wanted that drive to play out.
I second all of that. I love the game-winning touchdown, how Breece just extended. At first they thought it was a fumble, but then it ended up being a touchdown. Like, he breaks through contact and then dives and reaches touchdown. Really solid. I don't want to even add anything because you nailed it. That was one of my top 2. I wanted to go with that one. I wasn't sure if you're going to pick that one or the one I'm going to go with, just to put another one on the docket. I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills drive that won it against the Baltimore Ravens. 12 plays, 77 yards, 4 minutes and 9 seconds. It wasn't only the ability to drive down and obviously kick the points to go ahead, but the way they did it and just using every last second of the clock. Devin Singletary going down and not getting into the end zone so they could keep bleeding the clock. Josh Allen purposefully sneaking it to get the first down at like the 1 or 2 yard line and not get the end zone. Yes, like, that was well done by the players, but it was well communicated from the coaching staff. They knew what they wanted to do, and they communicated it to the players, and they went out and executed. I thought that was just because you didn't want to just get down and score, right? You wanted to get down and score and have that be it. You didn't want to give the offense any opportunity for Baltimore to try and do anything. Yes, as Tim says, clock management. That's exactly what it was. So not only do you go and you get, excellent point from RJ. He said Sean McDermott talked about that last drive. It was masterful how everyone knew not to score and where to fall down to get another set of first downs. So smart. And that's smart from the players, but also smart from the coaching staff and the ability to communicate that and make sure everything went through. Yeah, and Jason saying it too. You could see McDermott talking and explaining everything to Josh before the sneak. Perfectly executed, gave them no chance.
Which is potentially a ripple effect from the 13 seconds missing.
Could very well be. They, maybe they don't want to take any chances at all.
Right, exactly. All of this, learning from that.
Yep, something wonky. And you have a kicker in Justin Tucker who on a good day could make it from like 65 roughly.
I don't know which way the wind was going.
Yeah, but it wasn't ideal kicking conditions, but I have faith in Tucker. Yeah, but again, you don't even get to that point. You snuff out any opportunity for a comeback for Baltimore. You drive down 12 minutes, 77 yards, 4 minutes and 9 seconds. Use every single drop, and just a variety of completions, especially the big one from Josh, 3rd and 2 at the Bills 28 when Knox, they basically run just like a smash concept, and Knox goes on that corner route, and Josh kind of leans into the hitch underneath to that China route, and the secondary players for Baltimore bite, and he floats it, layers it over the top to Knox, drops it right in over the safety and over the corner into Knox, who takes it and goes out of bounds. That was a huge play. And they, again, just being able to, and then they come right next, right? They end up getting a first down again after that. You get the Josh Allen scramble, you get the pass to Shakir that came from an Allen scramble. And then you get 1st and 10 at the Ravens 36, false start. So it's 1st and 15. And then that huge, like we talked about, that roughing the passer penalty after an incomplete pass to Devin Singletary, which we made it 2nd and 15 at the Ravens 41. Stevens gets flagged for unnecessary roughness on a play that he probably shouldn't have gotten flagged for, or on roughing the quarterback, whatever it was. Either way, it shouldn't have been called. Allen embellished it a little bit. I feel bad for Stevens, but it contributed to, that Bills drive being sustained, and ended up being a play that the Bills used to move to 3-1 and beat the Baltimore Ravens. And that'll do it for player of the day, rookie of the day, and drive of the day. And thus it'll do it for us here on another episode of Cover One Football Weekly. We appreciate all of the engagement that we had on this episode. A lot of live engagement here in the chat with
Yeah.
each other, with us. We really appreciated all the back and forth and everything we saw. Thank you very much to everyone who joined us live here on this episode. If you were watching later, listening later, whatever have you, thank you very much for your view, your listen, your download, whatever have you. If you were watching this live, watching this later on YouTube, please drop a like on this video. It goes a long way towards helping us to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. If you didn't like this episode and thus don't want to drop a like, that's fine. Tell your enemies about how awful this episode was, and then make them watch it and then see what happens from there. If you also did like this episode, tell your family and friends and loved ones and all that kind of stuff. If you were listening on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, please rate and review and subscribe. Subscribe as well here on YouTube as well. Thank you very much for the kind words, Tim. Again, this is something that, we're known for Bill's content here at Cover One, but myself and Kendall and Russ, when his coaching duties start to lessen a little bit for his son's team, we're really kind of taking, these steps into uncharted territories and uncharted waters as we, try to grow the brand and plant more flags league wide. So we appreciate all the support from all you folks in any way, shape, or form. Really cool to see the kind words coming in. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Also, thank you to Silas for multiple super chats tonight as well. Really appreciate the monetary donation in addition to the kind words that are rolling through and the general support as always. So thank you folks very much for riding with us tonight on this episode of Cover One Football Weekly. We will be back next Sunday live, 7:15 p.m. Eastern, as always, as we have been these first 4 weeks. And that's where we'll be living as we move forward in this regular season of the NFL. So for myself, Anthony Prohaska, and for Mr. Kendall Mirsky, I combined Mr. and Kendall and made it one thing. Oh, I got to stop. Amy says, perfect tree. And she shouts out my wife. She says, go Bills. Yeah,
shine.
We're in October. This tree's baller right now. We got some purple and orange garland. We got jack-o'-lantern lights on it. And then we got some Halloween-themed ornaments with the black and orange and some silver aspect as well. I think the tree is popping. The tree brought its A game for October. Again, we're past the first quarter of the season. Things are starting to get real. The tree's getting real. Also, this tree needs to show out because you know what's going to happen? Come November, the bigger tree is going to come out. And then we got Christmas tree action going on in here. But I think the tree brought its A game, and my wife brought her A game as well, decorating that tree. That's got nothing to do with me. I'm kind of like the idea that I just wanted a tree, and then my wife kind of takes it from there. So major shout out to my wife. For it. Yeah, I know. I always give her the credit. I would never do that. RJ says, agreed. The tree is in peak mid-season form. My wife will appreciate the hell out of it. Thank you, RJ, and thank you, Amy, for the shout out for the tree, and thus shout outs for my wife. For myself, Anthony Prohaska, for Kendall Mirsky, this has been another episode of Cover One Football Weekly. We will see you next week live at 7:15 p.m. Eastern. We hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well, staying safe, taking care of one another, being kind to one another. This is funny. Yeah, I'm an idea guy. Kendall might need a tree. We're getting off topic. We appreciate you folks. Stay kind, stay safe, take care of one another. Please rate and review and subscribe and drop likes and all that kind of stuff and words of mouth and positive words of encouragement and all those things. We will see you next week, Sunday, 7:15 p.m. Eastern. See you next week. Take care of yourselves.